justice campaigner and a historian. In the 1960s, the people of Mapoon were forcibly moved off their land by the then Queensland government. And in 1974, Barbara Miller was involved in helping them move back onto their traditional land. Now, this ruffled feathers in the government and even saw Barbara Miller placed under house arrest. These days, she spends a lot of time travelling the world with her Indigenous husband, Norman Miller, working with the Centre for International Reconciliation and Peace, which they co-founded back in 1998. Barbara has now written her story in a memoir called White Woman, Black Heart. She's here to tell us a little bit more about it. Good afternoon, Barbara Miller.
Great to be here, Adam. Thanks for inviting me.
What an interesting title for your book. Tell us more about it.
Well, I think so. I had planned to just call it Journey Home to Old Mapoon, and the reason for that is because my mother, as I was growing up, always used to say to me, the stork dropped you in the wrong place. And because my point of view was quite different from the rest of the family, and helping the Mapoon people move back to their land meant that I found my home by being part of an Aboriginal family. And so I thought that was an amazing theme. And you mentioned the Aboriginal elder Burnham Burnham saying that I was a white woman with a black heart. And so that became part of the title as well.
Remind the listeners that maybe don't remember back to the 60s or they weren't even around then. Tell us what actually happened at Mapoon in 1963.
Basically, the Queensland government wanted to allow Comalco to mine at Mapoon, and so the Aboriginal people there were basically in the way, and they tried to close down the Presbyterian mission and move the people out. And some of them resisted and wouldn't go. And so the Queensland government sent the police in, rounded them up. It was like a mass kidnap and a mass arson. They were loaded onto a boat and many sent up to Bamaga, the tip of the Cape, and their houses and beds, as we just heard that song from Midnight Oil, although that referred to the Northern Territory, their belongings and everything were just burnt behind them, including the church and the store and the school and the health clinic, so the people would not return. But they didn't realise the strength and resilience of the Mapoon people who kept it in their heart all those years that they might return one day.
And how does a white woman from the city end up working with the people of Mapoon to try and return them to their land?
Well, that's an interesting story in itself, because I was with a group in Melbourne called International Development Action, and they wanted to do a project called the White Colonialism in Australia project, and they wanted to know where on earth in Australia would they do this. And so Burnham Burnham, this Aboriginal elder, said, I'll connect you with some key Aboriginal leaders who'll tell you where to go. And so when we had that meeting with Charlie Perkins, Mick Miller and others in Canberra, they said the place to go is around the Weipa area. And I didn't know at that stage that Burnham Burnham was also playing matchmaker. Found that out many years later. But when I came up here, the first place I went was Arakoon, and I met Jerry Hudson, and he said, I want to go back to Old Mapoon, the people want to go back. He was head stockman at Arakoon. He dropped everything, and he said, please help us to move back to Mapoon. So the project ended up being turned on its head to not being focused on Weipa but being focused on Mapoon. Jerry and his family packed all their belongings and moved back to Mapoon right then and there.
What were the challenges that the people of Old Mapoon faced in returning home, Barbara Miller?
Basically, the Queensland government did not want them to return, and so there was a huge amount of intimidation. Jerry was arrested for stealing a brumby. I was arrested for trespassing on Weipa South Aboriginal community, because in those days we were still under the Queensland Aborigines Act, Aboriginal people in Queensland.
You were placed under house arrest at one point. What was that like?
Well, that was an amazing story too. I had travelled to Thursday Island and to talk to the Mapoon people living there, and Marjorie Waimara travelled with me because I found this, that people, once people knew I was there to help them, they wanted to help me and they wanted to travel with me. And so Marjorie went over to Bamaga with me to visit the new Mapoon people who'd been moved up there to a place called Hidden Valley. Now, even though I had permission from the Department of Aboriginal Affairs to be there, they were still very annoyed and put me under house arrest, and Marjorie too, in the hotel. And we were, hostile. We were just really lucky that Eddie Wallace-Smith, who was the state member for Cook at the time, happened to be visiting and got us out.
You're hearing from Barbara Miller on Northern Drive this afternoon. She is the author of a memoir called White Woman, Black Heart, Journey Home to Old Mapoon. Now, Barbara Miller, in your work as a historian and also someone that's been heavily involved in social justice over the years, have you ever encountered something quite like this where people have been able to return to their ancestral lands and there has been a reconciliation of sorts that's happened there? They've been able to come home and to go about things the way they wanted to.
Yes, I don't think it's a common story at all, and I really believe that the Mapoon people have shown a lot of courage and a lot of resilience. There's been a huge amount of opposition from the Queensland government. It was the days of Bjelke Petersen, Kaloran, etc. Bob Catter actually did help later on with them getting the land grant. So the Mapoon people are happy about that. My husband Norman and I visited in 2016, and so that I could consult with the community over the memoir, and it's such a success story. I mean, there are no police in the community because there's no crime. The young people, I was talking to the children and the grandchildren of the pioneers that moved back. The grandchildren just love being there. It's not as if they want to race off to the town to the big lights. They actually love being there because they love going fishing and hunting and being on their country. So it's just a real success story.
You played a role in helping them get back. What role was that?
Well, basically, I was the liaison between them and the outside world. So I basically did a lot of lobbying. It was just really practical things like getting some finance for them, getting some approvals for getting a two-way radio and helping to set it up there, getting some finance in to help clear the airstrip. Just a huge amount of really, really practical things. Helping to get them set up legally as a company, bringing in press support, getting just a whole lot of lobbying of government.
When you reflect back, having written your memoir on your role in this and just the significance of what occurred there, is this the most meaningful thing for you that you've done in your work as a social justice campaigner?
I don't know that I'd make comparisons, but look, this is such a success story. I just put a huge amount of time. It consumed me for 2 years at that particular time when they moved back. It was so worthwhile. It's so good that to be able to have supported the people to move back to their own land, rebuild their community. Mapoon people say they've risen from the ashes, and they certainly have.
Barbara Miller, thank you for sharing a little bit of what people can find in your memoir. Where will the book be? Can they buy it online? Or?
They can buy it on Amazon, and you can also have a look at my website, barbara-miller-books.com.
Thank you, Barbara Miller, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Adam.
Barbara Miller with us on Northern Drive. Her book, White Woman, Black Heart, Journey Home to Old Mapoon, as you've heard, is now available on Amazon, and you can go to Barbara's website. The time, 11 minutes to 5 o'clock. We're going to be taking you to the Crystal Cascades